Welcome guys, welcome. We have a special guest, Rabbi Kalmus from Queens,
New York.
Welcome. He has a podcast, I believe 2 years already?
I've been teaching Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman's teachings for a few years. We started an organization called Tzissel in Breslev from May when the COVID started, and we've been doing live classes since then.
Beautiful. And he has a little bit of a different style than mine.
Growing up, I didn't know what Shabbat was growing up. Not until I was about 24 years old. I actually used to go to a lot of music concerts, like a lot of Breslevers that like music.
Yeah.
And I used to also experiment with some drugs. And one of those drugs actually led me to have sort of out-of-body experience. And I told my friend afterwards that we have to go visit Israel. So he said, "Are you at the same concert as me?" Ultimately, I begged him to get us on the birthright trip. We knew that there was a free trip to Israel. That was the extent of my knowledge of the Holy Land. We got there, thank God. I came out of a bar and I met my wife, who was a religious Yemenite Sephardi Israeli Jew.
Beautiful.
And that was the beginning of everything. And ultimately, when I started to search for where was my connection within Judaism after I realized that it was authentic, that it was real, that it was true for me and for all those around me, I started to beg Hashem that I should find a rabbi, a Rebbe that I could connect to, that I could relate to, that he could stimulate me intellectually, that he could also push me to be my best self, that he can, so to speak, elevate me to the highest places along with everybody around me. And thank God I found Rabbi Nachman.
Beautiful. Tell us, what are the things that most attracted you, Rabbi Nachman? How does Rabbi Nachman change your life today?
First thing, for sure, is Hitbodedut. I'm just going to be explicit and honest with you guys, since I'm only here for a few minutes in Florida. But I actually have a long history of mental health issues, going back since I was 10. Diagnosed with major depression disorder, was told it was genetic since I've been 10 years old, having depressive episodes every single year for the majority of my life, along with anxiety, X, Y, and Z, but diagnosed, and a learning disability. The culmination of all of these things together, even though on the outside it's always been a smile, and people have always thought that I was better or well off than I actually was, but like many people who are very much suffering, it's happening all on the inside. One of the challenges of being so, tactful, is that people don't actually know that you're sick. And that was actually part of my curse, was that I never let anybody in, and I struggled much more because of that. By the time I became Baal Tshuva, and I realized Hashem existed, I thought that was going to be the end of all of my mental health issues. And in fact, what they don't tell you when they do Kiruv is that it gets harder before it gets easier. And I found that I didn't have a home back where I was in the secular world, and I also didn't yet have a home in the spiritual world. So I was very much in limbo and very unstable. I ended up getting married, having children, and then ultimately I broke very, very much from all of the pressure and all of the challenges, all the difficulties and the unsurety of things. And I ended up actually in a psych ward. Wow. There I had many treatments done, and it was years leading up to the psych ward that I checked myself in. Ultimately it got so bad that I actually signed up for ECT, electric shock therapy, which I only saw in horror movies. But this is how much I was not getting better. Ultimately, when I was in the psych ward, that was really the most sobering moment of my life. To know that a person who always felt that I had potential, that I could help a lot of people, that I could do so much, and yet everything in my life was crumbling around me, even though I was trying my best. This led me to dig very deep. And at this point, the only thing that was keeping me going was Rabbi Nachman. I had my Likutei Moharan, like Gedale does, all the time with me. It was the only thing that I could get inspiration from that was keeping me from Chas v'Shalom doing something to myself. Ultimately, when I was in the psych ward, I was sitting in the bed, and I remember looking at my dress, my hospital gown, and I'm 30 years old, and I have 2 children, and I have a wife, 2 babies, and it was really the most critical moment of my life. And I said, okay, I know one thing for sure. If there's any way I'm not just going to get out of this and survive, but actually live a good life, it's going to be through Rabbi Nachman. Because I already knew that everything that he said was true. It's just very difficult to actually do the things that he says. Okay? So I said, Hashem, everything that I've tried to do has not worked. If I'm going to get out, I'm going to need you to help me. I said, Hashem, I promise you, if you take me out of the psych ward and you give me a good life, I will spend the rest of my life helping your children get out of their dark places. From that moment, I decided that from now on, I would do at least 1 hour of Hippolyte every single day, because Rabbi Nachman says that this is the greatest of all service that a person can do. It will elevate you from whatever you're going through and bring you very, very close to Hashem. From that day moving forward, for the past few years, I have done at least 1 hour every single day. This has saved my life literally. Hippolyte is one thing. I don't know if anybody knows here, but it means that you spend the time alone that you talk to Hashem from your heart, like He's your best friend. So this is something that I did. Another thing that I did, and I think Gedale speaks about this a lot, is shifting away from the victim mindset. Growing up, I grew up in a secular Ashkenazi Jewish home, where thank God my parents were very loving, and they gave me a lot. However, one of the difficulties and challenges of this is that when I got to the real world, I wasn't necessarily prepared to do things on my own. And as a result, once I got married and I had kids and I had a job and I was trying to figure out all these things, and it's on me, I didn't have the tools to be able to adjust. And this is part of what crippled me so much. However, Rabbi Nachman teaches more than anything else that there's ein shum yeyosh ba'olam klal. There's no such thing in the world as despair. And that Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim, He took you out of slavery, meaning you're not a victim, that I should be a God to you. That the moment that you make me your God, then you're not a victim anymore. And I started to thank Hashem for the fact that I've been suffering so much. I thanked Hashem that I was not supporting my wife as a husband. I thanked Hashem that I was not able to be attentive to my children. I thanked Hashem that I have a job, that job allows me to spend time in my car and sleep in the car for hours a day, and I don't get fired. Things that seemingly on paper are not the best in the world. You wouldn't pay money for these things or sign up for them. But to thank Hashem for those things as well. So the shift from victim mindset to gratitude was also a big shift in my life. Rabbi Nachman says that gratitude is the taste of Olam Haba. That if you could be grateful right now, you will be able to, so to speak, have a portal to then, because what's going to happen then? You'll realize everything was for the best. So if you can just appreciate that now before you actually experience it, then you can taste it now. So this was a big thing as well. Gratitude, shifting away from victim mindset. Another huge thing was, and I know that this is very, very difficult and hard for us to understand or hear, that was my shifting away from secular wisdom. Rabbi Nachman speaks in many, many places about that secular wisdom and media affects you much, much more intensely than we give it credit for. Because it's not visible, you don't see it, it doesn't express itself in a way that you could go, oh, it's from that. However, you don't realize how much it's influencing you. And specifically, someone as sensitive as me, like Gedale said, I was born in a dar, it means I'm a very sensitive soul.
Right.
So I'm very, very sensitive to different stimulus, both in the good way and also not in that way. And I had to tremendously make barriers and fences for myself to actually choose what I'm going to let into my mind, as opposed to just having it be a free-for-all and whatever comes in goes in. So these are some of the big things, but everything he said is literally, each thing has brought me more and more joy and peace in my life.
Beautiful, beautiful. You know, you could see how, you know, one thing is reading about Rabbi Nachman's teachings. And, you know, Baruch Hashem, we have a pretty big following, but it's very hard to actually do the things. And I don't want people to get discouraged. For example, when I speak about his bodedut, you know, I literally was learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings for 10 years. And it took me 10 years to do his bodedut. So you should see, it took me 10 years to do it. So sometimes today, we're looking at these teachings, you know, it's hard to deal with your emotions. It's very, very important to build the patience. You have to build the patience today, because honestly, we're so built on instant gratification. And honestly, the whole purpose is not what you get, it's what you want. You don't get rewarded for what you get rewarded for what you want. And this is where the desire comes from. When a person has desire that can change mountains. I had a class today where we spoke about whatever you're seeking is already seeking you. What this concept is a very important concept. That Hashem purposely, He'll put a lack in your life. There's definitely going to be a lack in your life, no matter what. For yours, you talked about electric shock. Well, I think we're going to get one tomorrow morning in the inauguration. We're definitely going to get electric shock. I think I'm still in PTSD from the electric shock. Sorry for any political jokes. That's the last one forever. Okay, that's it. But the bottom line is God creates. We walk around with such lack, and I think this is a concept today where if you don't understand the lack concept, it's very hard to function in life. Because what happens is if you don't understand that you have to have a lack in life, and you come closer to your Creator through that lack, then what you're going to do is you're going to basically you're going to focus on the lack you have, and you're going to see the whole world has exactly what you don't have, what you do have. And this is called, I believe it's called the missing tile syndrome. The missing tile syndrome is purposely the Yetzer Hara shows you what you don't have, and then he tells you, look, everybody else has what you don't have. And this is where despair comes to the world. And this is what we have to be careful. We have to be careful that Rabbi Nachman spoke about constantly being present. And he clearly said it to us in lesson 272. He says, it's very, very important in the service of God that you need to focus only on today. Today. Whether it's regard to your livelihood, your personal needs, when you start accumulating and thinking from one day to the next, that's the beginning of the downfall. We also need to understand what our enemy does. Our subconscious, our ego, whatever fancy word you want to use for it, it's Yetzer Hara. Does one thing to you. He wants to put you in the future, or he wants to put you in the past. He wants to get you anxious, or he wants to get you depressed. This is his game. This is his game. So Reb Nachman told us, listen, there's only one solution you have. You don't have to be so smart, but you have to find a way to constantly renew yourself. You have to figure out a way to look at your relationship brand new. You have to look at your life brand new. And if you don't do that, you're going to end up in these two states. And this is something that's very, very important today. Because I said today, how come it's very hard for people to get up in the morning? Think about it. Why is it so hard for people to get up in the morning? Because they've literally already predicted how they were going to feel the whole day. They already know what's going to happen the whole day. At 11 o'clock, I'm going to do this. At 3 o'clock, I'm going to go on my phone. 4 o'clock, I'm going to get in that bad mindset. 5 o'clock, I'm going to check out. They've already predicted the whole day. It's already done. And this is what's called constriction consciousness. This is what we have to be careful for. And if you don't have a renewal mechanism, it's no possible way to have a settled mind. And it's not really what's happening in the world. It's my lack of clarity that's not bringing me closer to my Creator. So I realized that. I realized that if I don't have a mindset of renewal every single day, I'm definitely going into anxiety, or I'm definitely going into sadness or something. It's just it's like gravity pulling you there, and we need to understand how disposable we are to this. We're prone to these two states, and if we don't have a form of constantly renewal. One of the things I do every single day, I look at the class I do every day. Wow, brand new class. I never gave a class before. And if you look at life like that, then you're not going to get dragged in one way or the other. And I think that's one of the most important, Reb Nachman saying, lesson 10. He says the sole reason why people are not closer to God today is because they do not have a settled mind. It's because they're too focused on predicting the future, or they're too stuck on why did the past happen. And what happens is, if I don't have the present, I have nothing. And this is something that we really have to constantly infuse everybody. New classes, new quotes. Change that mindset. Because that mindset is dangerous. Remember, first something starts as a mood, then it becomes a personality. And the rest is history. So Reb Nachman gives us always a concept to renew. Because we're so drawn to despair. We're so drawn to despair, no matter how successful you are, no matter what's going on in your life, the Yetzer Hara knows where to get you. He gets you in despair. And this is what the fight is today. More than ever, 2021, you have to fight for happiness. It's not going to come to you. You have to fight for it. And you have to fight for it by changing your focus and having a constant renewal. And it's really about discipline. And that's one of the things that it gets me through situations in life, is being able to have that daily ritual, unload what I'm going through, do the hisbodedut, get rid of the negative energy, introduce positive energy, and it's a completely shift of consciousness the rest of the day. And that's something that we really, really wonder. So you do an hour a day, huh?
I do at least an hour a day.
Wow.
Can I add something to what you said?
Sure, absolutely.
This is another concept actually that has tremendously changed my life, which Gedale just spoke about, which is Hayom. That Rabbi Nachman says that Mashiach, when we spoke to him 2,000 years ago, they said, when are you coming? He said, Hayom,
right.
I'm coming today, but he didn't come today. So did Mashiach lie? And the answer is, Mashiach is there any time that you're in the state of mind of Hayom. That when you are today, right now, Mashiach is there. But any time that you're not today, you will not find your redemption and your salvation. And I had a tremendous chidush, a novelty of the mind, on this topic specifically. Rabbi Nachman says in Likutei Moharan that as opposed to the secular world which teaches us that the truth hurts. I don't know if you ever heard that, but when I was a kid a lot, they said that the truth hurts. Rabbi Nachman says the opposite.
Right.
Rabbi Nachman says that the truth makes a person happy and lies make a person sad. So how does that fit in with what Gedale is speaking about, what Rabbi Nachman is saying about Hayom today? So the answer is actually something that I learned because I used to be a mental health therapist and a substance abuse counselor. I went to school for that. I used to tell my clients all the time, even though I couldn't get it myself, which is probably also why they were struggling, why you shouldn't focus on the past, because at the moment that you went through it, it wasn't called the past, it was a present moment. And when you get to the future is not going to be called the future then, it's going to be a present moment. So then really, throughout your entire life, all you have is a collection of present moments.
Right.
So how does that fit in with what Rabbi Nachman's saying? That means that in fact there really is only the present. It's not even a shift in mindset, that is reality. So why does it hurt when we think about the past or the future? Why does it make us sad when we think about the past or anxious when we think about the future? Because it's not real. Because there is no such thing outside of a present moment. So when you think about a lie, Rabbi Nachman says automatically you're going to feel a sad or negative emotional state. So it's just something that I used to speak to my teacher students about.
You know, talking about this, Rabbi Nachman's always telling us to enhance an emotion before. That means basically whatever emotion you want to feel, you have to get your mind there. We've spoken many times that your mind, whatever your mind is holding, your body's going to manifest. We all know that. Whatever your mind is holding, your body's always going to manifest. You can't expect to feel better if you're not thinking better. That's the 101. But being able to say thank you in advance for something. And when you say thank you, you almost feel, when I say thank you, I almost feel like I've already received something. So you're actually tricking your mind when you say thank you in advance. I'm not saying, Alexa, say thank you for me and I have a Yeshua. That's not the thank you that I mean. You have to be in a position to align your heart and your mind and say thank you in advance. And when you're able to say thank you in advance, it's not easy to do it. And you realize whenever we have resistance to saying thank you, that means there's a lack of belief.
Right, sure.
The fact that I'm resisting and saying thank you in advance, that means I don't believe it. That's how you know something is not working. The reason you know something is not working, if you can't do it. It's the universe or Hashem showing us, by the way, you're not aligned with what you're thinking. You're saying it, but you're not really feeling it. But when you say thank you in advance, like Rabbi Arush says and all that, you're actually tricking your mind into already receiving. Like somebody says thank you, thank you Hashem, you've already received something. Mm-hmm. So I never understood the science behind why saying thank you in advance works. We read the book 198 Miracles, because you have a different, when you say really thank you in advance, which is really a form of putting Yud-K, Vav-K, and Elokim one. That's the whole purpose when we say Shema, is to be able to look at your day as one. The separation is the problem, but when we look at it as one and we say thank you in advance, you actually can be able to receive. Now, according to the intensity you do this, according to the music, how you repeat it, it'll begin from a state of being, I don't really feel it, to all of a sudden you'll see one day, you'll feel oneness. And that's when you see the miracles happen. You'll see the oneness. You'll see the mind and the heart being connected. And that's when that's what stimulates the flow of Shefa. So again, a lot of this is a lot of practice. in advance, saying thank you. In order to say thank you in advance, I have to take out my little logical mind that wants to control everything and completely just go into the future and believe something. Because if you tell people, say thank you in advance, they'll look at you like you're out of your mind. They'll look at you like you're out of your mind. But the whole point is that Hashem created that problem in advance for you. It's tailor-made for you. And this is why the biggest problem in life, real pain today, is being away from your Creator. As long as you're close to your Creator, you're not in pain. That's the process. But once real pain today is being away from the Creator. And this is something that we really need to get people to get the game, get right away. Get out of the messenger mindset and get into the message mindset. And that's how we get people, God willing, into always that pain becomes purpose.
Right, sure.
So tell me a little bit about your working in recovery centers.
Sure.
Interesting you work in that.
So I, when I was in college, I went to UCLA for graduate school.
Beautiful.
And they gave me 2 internships, which happened to be in substance abuse clinics. I wanted to do mental health therapy. They placed me there because for many men, especially people who have been in veterans in the military, they don't want to see women, they only want to see men. So I got those jobs seemingly because of that. And it ended up being one of the best experiences of my life, to be able to see and connect to those people in that place, in their pain. And the truth is, I didn't feel that much different from them, which is probably why we got along so well, and it worked. When I was in the substance abuse clinic, you could see very clearly, and this is something because I went for social work, that I still believe in. And that is that every person has strengths and vulnerabilities. And it's not that a person is bad, or it's not that a person doesn't want to do good. It's just that the amount of vulnerabilities has outweighed the strengths, which is not that person's fault. Now, what could you do for that person? You believe that they really do want to do good. And that's the start. And by the way, Chassidus teaches the same thing.
Right.
The Baal Shem Tov teaches the same thing. What's the beginning of you helping a person? First believing that he's good. If you don't first believe that he's good, you for sure can't help him. So, just to think that this person is good, and now what's the problem then? They don't have enough tools to pick in a way which is beneficial for them, that's not destructive for them. And if you could give them more tools, then they will make the right decisions on their own, because every person wants to do good, he just may or may not have the ability to do so. So just this experience, and even people when I teach classes, I've had people come up to me like, what's your background? I say, I'm Jewish. They said, that's not what I'm talking about. What did you go to school for? I said, social work. I said, I was a mental health therapist. He goes, yeah, your classes look like therapy sessions. So I don't do it on purpose, but what I'll do is I'll actually put my guys like in a circle around, and I ask them how they're feeling, and I ask them so it's a very interactive experience versus me talking the whole time. But in fact, you could see very many commonalities between Rabbi Nachman's teachings, the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, and new age discoveries we've made in psychology. Anybody who reads Likutei Moharan will know right away, if they have any semblance of psychological knowledge, that he is a psychological master. Parlance. Absolutely. That there is, and I believe this, and this is the reason why we created our organization, Sion Breslev. After going to school for 6 years, working for years in substance abuse clinics, going through all of my own stuff, I hold with my heart, and I don't believe it, I know it, that Rabbi Nachman has more to offer in the mental health world than all of the therapists and all of the new age discoveries that we've made in medicine and medication. I believe this with my whole heart. So
it's funny because I actually have mental health. I own a facility. We have about 14, 15 therapists. Leon is one. He's one of our therapists. And I got him into Breslov. And now his clients are completely, they have a whole different mindset. He's getting them to do his bodhidut, but it's absolutely right. If you see it in the teachings, it's 100% there.
Sure.
And I'll tell you why. Reb Nachman told us there's one key teaching that you have to have in your back pocket your whole life. And if you don't have this key teaching, you're going to end up suffering, which is, what's the opposite of a zamra? It's lack of self-esteem. A zamra means to sing. Reb Nachman recognized that life is going to be tough. Things are going to break in your life. Things are going to be not going your directions. And what happens is we have a tendency to take failure very personal. We have a tendency to take things very personal. We have a tendency to to have a breakup in a marriage and all of a sudden stay in fear, being afraid of getting remarried again. Or we have a tendency to take failure in business and say, I'm the failure, and then basically project failure on somebody else. And Reb Nachman gave us such a beautiful, simple teaching that really is the key to everything. And he says it's called a zamra. A zamra is one of the key teachings of Reb Nachman, which is the ultimate key to self-esteem. Because what happens is if you're focusing on what's not going right, you're going to lose your self-esteem. If you're focusing on what's good, you're going to gain your self-esteem. And remember, self-esteem is really the key to beating any addiction, to beating anything. Because a person with healthy self-esteem, when he fails, he's not going to what? Quit. Quitting is a form of arrogance. Now you could tell me, how could you say quitting is arrogance? Because what happens when we quit? We say, Hashem should have given it to me already. He gave me too much. So you could see, as long as your resilience is humility, quitting is actually arrogance. That's why Reb Nachman says it's forbidden to quit. Because you don't understand that anyway, you're going through life, you're going through a mission, you're going through a process anyway. You're going to have to go through it. No matter who you marry, there's no magic box. No matter what business you get into, there's no magic. You're going to have to go through this failure process. And you're going to have to start getting comfortable going through failure and getting yourself up. And this is why a Zamra is teaching us always, sing with what you got. Because if you don't sing with what you got, you're gonna complain with what you don't have. And that is where self-esteem is rooted. Self-esteem is rooted in a person stacking all his failures on top of his head, instead of taking those failures and recognizing that those failures are part of the process. That's the only difference. Taking the failures, putting them on your head, or taking the failures, putting them on the bottom. And remember, to the extent that we have healthy self-esteem, we take things less personal. We're more likely to take a decision. We're more likely to get into a relationship. We're more likely to not be self-centered and make everything about us. But when we don't have healthy self-esteem, we become the center of attraction. We become very, very, very hyper-focused on us. Everybody's talking about me. You know, you get into a relationship with low self-esteem. You don't get a text message back in 5 minutes. You see, he's not interested in me. This is your life. Your life, 5 minutes, you're going to have a panic attack on a text message. This is what happens. 5 minutes, you don't get the text message. He doesn't want me. Does you see? It's not meant to be. It always happens to me. Maybe he didn't have battery. Do you understand? Because we don't have self-esteem, everything's about us. Or you go in a job interview, somebody will look at a phone and say, you see, he doesn't want to give me the job. Maybe his wife is pregnant. Do you understand? To the extent that we don't have self-esteem, we become the center of attraction. And when we have become the center of attraction, that's ultimately arrogance. We're thinking too much about us. But when we have healthy self-esteem, we're able to have healthy perspective. We could say, he's just picking up a phone. Maybe he has an emergency. Instead of, oh my God, I'm not getting the job. Oh my God, he doesn't like me anymore. Why didn't you call me back? Imagine you calling a guy back. Why didn't you call me back? Where were you? Now for sure I don't want to go out with you. Do you understand? These are the little moves that happen in our lives when we don't have healthy self-esteem. We don't give people space. We become too attached. So if you don't have a Zamra, you're going to have a problem with self-esteem. And when you don't have self-esteem, what's going to happen is you stop making decisions. You stop going for what you want because you're too focused on what looks good instead of what is good. And this is why I can't tell, this is the number one things I try to build up with people is you got to build up your self-worth. Because when you have low self-worth, what's going to happen? You're going to go into always comfort mode. You're going to be too cautious and too hyper-focused on what people say. You're going to take everything personal. And what happens when you take everything personal? You're just battling emotions your whole life, and you can't live. And this is one of the things that I'm stressing to people. You need a Zamra. And this is why I was able to get remarried after 2 months. This is why I'm able to open up a new business after failure, because I don't really care what people say. I know what I need to do. But the healthy self-esteem allows you to make quick decisions. And the last thing we want in our lives is to stay in our head and never make a decision. Because when it's going to happen, you're going to have anxiety over making decisions. So now you have anxiety over making decisions. Did I make the right decisions? We're always in our head, and we can't get anything done. And this is what Reb Nachman teaches you. You fail, you get up. Stop overthinking it. Recreate yourself. It takes the whole control, it takes the whole self-centeredness, and that's the way to win. That's really the way to win. And this is why a Zamra is not only for you, it's also for other people. Because what's going to happen, the first thing, if you don't love yourself, what are you going to do? You're going to say, that's my mood. My mood is I'll treat people the way I feel about myself. Next thing you know, not only do we not feel good about ourselves, our relationships become terrible.
Right.
Because we dump our garbage on other people. So a Zamra cuts the whole pattern. This is when the Jews were in the desert and the Jews sinned with the golden calf. What did they say? We're black, but we're beautiful. Yes, we're blackened with sins, but we're still beautiful. And this is where you see B'nai Brown's work today on the gift of imperfection is such a popular movement because this is what it is. It's a gift, imperfection.
Sure, you can even say the mitzvah of love your brother like yourself, which we know is the foundation of the whole Torah, right? I was thinking about the language. Why does it say love your brother like yourself? It should just be love your brother. Why like yourself? And the answer that I came up with is very much related to what Gedale is teaching us. And that is that if you don't love yourself, you can't love them like yourself. So you have to first love yourself before you can love your brother like you.
Correct.
Otherwise you can't fulfill the mitzvah, which is the entire ikar of the whole Torah, meaning that you can't fulfill your potential in your life, which is really obviously what we're all trying to do.
Beautiful. And I also see something as far as effort. You know, it took me 10 years to get into his Bodhidut. And once I started, it took me 6 months to even get a feeling. Forget I feel like it, I don't feel like it. It was talking to the wall. I'm sure we've all spoken to people who are literally like a wall, right? It was like literally talking to the wall. Cold ice prayer. And you need to understand something. If you don't have healthy self-esteem, these obstacles, they're going to hit you from everywhere. And I say to myself, when we were just talking in the car, I said, I don't know how these clients are going to do it. They have 3 months ahead of them in treatment. All they want is quick satisfaction. They're going to have to go through some tremendous cravings. They're going to go through some dark times. And they have to understand this is part of the process. But why am I going to put an effort in myself? How could you sit there and talk to your creator for 30 minutes without hearing? You have to be able to have that muscle in your head that I need to focus on what I'm doing. And I'm not interested in what I'm feeling. So effort and also self-esteem is very, very connected. The amount of effort you put into something is very connected to how much a person loves himself. Not in an arrogant way, but believing in his potential, believing in his thing. And it's very connected because you see people that have very low resilience, they have the greatest mental health issues.
Sure, 100%.
So there's a connection between resiliency and mental health. When you have resilience, you're going to have happiness. And the only way to have that resilience is to have healthy self-esteem and have a lot of endurance. What else can you share about that you enjoyed in Breslev? What else can you share with everybody? Before we start taking some questions.
Sure. I find that there is a premium on simplicity and genuinity. Obviously, we live in a very plastic world, and we're living in the center of it in the Western civilization. And even though on paper we feel that should make us happy because, so to speak, we have reached the highest levels of those things, I told my friend this as well, that in some ways we've made so much progress on the outside that I feel like in the process of doing so we lost what was on the inside. And I feel that Rabbi Nachman's teachings help you refocus your consciousness, your mind, your heart, to reorient yourself back to who you are. What's going on inside of there. Part of the reason I think it's so hard to talk to Hashem and do Hipodadut is because we haven't heard ourselves in so long.
Right.
We're so constantly busy connecting to and responding to everybody else and the stimulus of who has this, who's doing what, who has this, and going on in your whole life, and never actually asking yourself, who am I? What do I want with my life? What would be a good life for me? What at the end of my life could I say was really important to me? And now I can work towards moving that. We know that the word paro, the name paro, we're learning now in the Torah, that the root of this name means to divert. Right? The Ramchal says this in the beginning of Mesilat Yesharim. His whole purpose is to divert your attention from what? From who you are.
Right.
So comes along Moshe Rabbeinu, a big spiritual master like Rabbi Nachman. He comes down and he tells them, by the way, you guys are not slaves, you're free. And they couldn't hear him. That the Torah said that they had kotzer ruach, that they had shortness of breath. Why couldn't they hear him? Because the Ramchal says that they didn't have time to themselves. That he says in the beginning, and this, he's not a Hasidic master, right? Everybody holds by him. Right. He says that the beginning steps to connecting to Hashem is you need a time away from everything to find out who you are and what you want in your life. Right. This is something that Rabbi Nachman stressed for all of us. So the genuinity comes by speaking. By speaking out what is in your heart, you find out who you are. And it also gives you the courage to be that person when you're outside. Me, myself, when I was a kid, I used to get off the bus, my parents would tell you, and I used to dance home from the bus, down the sidewalk to my house. When we were playing sports, instead of actually being in the outfield with my glove, I would turn around and start to dance.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but my teammates hated me. And I didn't understand why, because I didn't understand social cues, because of this learning disability that they say that I have. So as a result of that,
you had a gift.
Yes, this whole thing went into exile. This concept of galut in the Torah, that my true self went into exile, even though that's me. And now all of a sudden, as the years are going on, and I don't understand why I'm not happy, I think it's because this girl doesn't like me, she dumped me, I'm failing at school, nothing I'm trying is working out. The real reason I'm not happy is because I'm not me. And I feel that this is, and I've had a lot of Hibodedut on this. I remember like a few months ago, I actually just started crying like a baby in my Hibodedut because it really hit me hard. If only we all understood that the true source of our unhappiness is not what's going on outside of us, but it's the fact that we do not feel comfortable being exactly who we are. And that if we could give ourselves the permission to, which comes with asking Hashem in that personal conversation, help me to believe in myself. You know, Rav Natan, he was the main student of Rabbi Nachman. That's how we have all of Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Rabbi Nachman said that anybody who has a munah, all of the difficulties and challenges in his life become much easier. It doesn't mean he's not going to have them, but his whole process has orientation to how he experiences them is much easier. Rav Natan got very nervous and very upset, which was unusually so. And he said, what do you mean? You're saying I don't have a munah? I literally left everything in my life because I believe so much in your teachings. If I have one thing, I have a munah, I have faith. He said, it's true, you believe in Hashem, but you don't believe in yourself. Right. And Rav Natan spent the rest of his life working on this. And this is something that I feel for our generation, more than anything, that the main reason we do not connect to Hashem, that we don't find a personal, beautiful, genuine connection with the source of existence, is because we do not believe in ourself. And ourself is actually a piece of God. So because we don't believe in ourselves, we can't find God because He is that part inside of yourself. This is what Hibodedut allows you to do, and then you can be genuine. And you don't have to worry about what Gedale is saying, what everybody's saying, because in truth you realize that happiness is not going to come when another person gives me an attaboy and a smack on the butt, right? My happiness and joy is going to come when I am myself. For thousands of years people knew how to be happy. How come we can't be happy now? We live more like kings than they did 2,000 years ago. We literally have everything physically that people have been yearning for thousands of years. And yet we've never been unhappier. Why? Because we have lost ourselves. So the process of being genuine, what Rabbi Nachman calls tamimut, to be simple and innocent, that this is also something which was very life-changing.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think today there's so much judgmental specifically in the Jewish world.
Sure.
Everybody, you have to fit into this box to go to yeshiva, you have to fit into that box, you have to fit into this box. 100%. Too many boxes, and the boxes are getting smaller and they're not working. Right. So this is why a lot of, sometimes there's a lot of apps they won't put me on. He's too out of the box. Maybe they don't like my tan. Who knows what it is? But he's too out of the box. I'm like, you guys are living in a box. I'm talking out of the box. And that's how how do you know? It's funny because when when I go see Rabbi Arush, I get like an aura of energy from him. Yeah, and you see Breslev, the elders. Yeah. And you see these guys 75, 85 years old. These guys they have light on their face. They're walking around like teenagers, but sometimes you see people that have 35 and they're walking around like they're 85 years old. You understand? The judgmentalists, the religion without the emunah, And I think that, I'm saying, why are so many people getting turned off? Why is a guy like me getting people that are in yeshiva coming back? I'm not even, it's because they were such in a box, and they think, and we have to understand, we all have a unique style. Not everybody has the same style. You're not meant to be in a box. And you have a unique style about you. And this is what you have to shine to the world. This is why Reb Nachman told us, first, you have to get to purpose in your life. The way you get to purpose is you have to take the gift that you have, and that gift has to shine to the world. It's called a nekuda. That point that you have. Whether that point could be a therapist, or that person could be a makeup artist that makes people happy. But whatever you need to do, you need to stay in your own lane and make sure that your light, your soul is shining and vibrating to the world so you can affect people instead of infect people. That's really the key. The worst thing to do, like Rabbi Nachman says, is you have to be able to never die as a copy. He spoke of many times, which I love his teachings, about the originality of the person. Right. You are not, one person's meant to be a teacher, one person's meant to be a quarterback, one person's meant to do that. It's not supposed to be, everybody's supposed to be in the same box. And I think that's what's destroying people today, is they lose their mission because they're too busy trying to be something else. Right. And this is something that Rabbi Nachman, and he gives it a great story about a story in the Gemara where there was a doctor that got a famous greeting in heaven once a day, I believe. Mm-hmm. There was Dr. Abba, I believe. Yeah. He got it in heaven. They called him every single day. They told him Shalom Aleichem or something. Right. And there was a rabbi, very very rabbi. He only got it once a week. So he says, why is this doctor getting a special greeting every day, and a rabbi who's much more learned than him, why is he getting it once a week? It's because that doctor, he basically separated men and women when they were bloodletting. He let people in for free, I believe. Yeah. That doctor, what he did is greater than that rabbi did. So we all have that important special point in us, that's how you're going to be happy, is when you have fulfillment. And when you take that gift that you have, it has to shine. Because if it doesn't shine, you'll be spiritually constipated and you're not going to have a mission. And the worst thing you could do is look next door and say, how come I'm not that? It's the worst thing you could do, because he doesn't have what you have. Right. You have a different gift. Right. You have a different way about you. And you have to actualize that gift at all cost. You have to search until you have to find what your gift is in your life. And that's what has to shine. And when you hit that point, it's called fulfillment. It's called happiness. It's called service. Until you get to that point, you have to search like somebody lost your iPhone in the middle of nowhere. You have to search. Rabbi Nachman says you have to search. What's happening today is people stop searching. They stop searching. Searching apps, but they're not searching for a purpose and mission.
I also don't think they have tools. The Rabbi Nachman has a Torah where he speaks about the concept of angel, that there's angels and they blow a shofar, and it awakens a person to their purpose in their life. Right. And he says in that Torah that it's really these true tzaddikim who are like those angels, that they help people find lost things. And I say this all the time to those people around me, that when people say, oh my gosh, I'm going to connect myself to one sage, I'm going to do the things that he says, that is handicapping me. That seems like it's too limited. And you don't realize that actually when you have a competent, wise, compassionate person who has been there, who is leading the way, it will only draw out that part of you which is yourself. It doesn't get in the way of you being the person who you always wanted to be. Right. He helps you find these lost things.
Beautiful. And that's exactly what you're really actualizing your soul. And when you're actualizing, there's the serotonin, there's the dopamine, sure, and then you feel fulfilled. But when we don't have that, it's because we're stuck on, we stop searching. And that's one of the things, you can't stop searching. I can't stress that enough. Lesson 9, which we speak today, that I would say one of a common mood today is exhaustion. Would you say? A lot of people are very exhausted. Mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted. Obviously, I really thanked Hashem the other day for 2020 being such a chaos in the media, so I can completely cut the media. Because otherwise I would still be involved. Because it had to be so bad that I'm saying this is complete nonsense. But it had to be so bad that I'm like, okay, this is not even means anything. I literally cut it and it did so much amazing things for me. So sometimes things have to get really, really bad, which they're really, really good. You understand? Because it was so bad, it's really, really good. So Reb Nachman tells us, what is the key to energy? How do you get energy? So what is the cause of lack of energy? The cause of lack of energy is holding things in. Number one. Holding things in. When we're holding things in, what happens is in life we start accumulating things. You start accumulating this breakup, you don't make peace with it, you hold it in. That failure, you start holding that in. This relationship, you start holding this in. So what's going on is you're walking around with a lot of weight, a lot of spiritual weight. Rabbi Nachman tells us prayer is the key to the energy. Prayer is your energy. Imagine that. It doesn't make any sense. What do you mean prayer is my energy? Opposite. I'm so exhausted, I don't want to pray. You understand? When you get to a point where you're so exhausted that you don't want to pray, you know what that's telling you? The reason why you're so exhausted is because you're not praying. The fact that you're not taking what life has given you, and you're not taking those things, and you're not elevating them, as our sages say, cast your burden onto your Creator. If you don't cast it up, what do you think you're going to do? Suppress it down. Either you cast it up, or you suppress it down. This releases energy. This takes away your energy. Very simple. Up or in. So what's the purpose of what are you doing in prayer? What's the purpose of Reb Nachman's telling you, lesson 9, prayer to God of my life? This is why when a person should pray with all his energy, and when a person prays with all his energy, and he concentrates, what happens? His energy is renewed there. Believe it or not, if you really get to a good prayer, you walk out of there like you literally ran a 10-mile marathon on Red Bulls, on whatever you want. If you really hit the right release, this is exactly how you're supposed to feel. If I don't feel energy after prayer, what's showing me is I'm clearly not surrendering. Something is still being held up. There's still a wall. Because remember, our nature in life is when something doesn't go right, what do? We put a wall. Right? Put a wall. The wall protects us. It imprisons us too. And then what happens? We put another wall up. Let's say we have low self-esteem. What's the first thing we're going to do? Not go to that job interview that we're supposed to go. Put the wall. That relationship, somebody wants to go out with you. Not now. Put another wall up. Okay. This situation, no, not now. Not now, not now, not now. Next thing you know, you're surrounded by 4 walls. So what happens? You're holding tremendous amount of pressure and anxiety. So how do you fix this? This is where you have to pray, and through prayer, you change your consciousness. That means you're not begging God to change his mind. You're praying that you should change the way you look at something. That is really the purpose of prayer. To come out of there like you spoke to a therapist, and you came with a different consciousness. That means God changes your brain. Believe it or not. I know it sounds weird. God changes your brain. It's almost like taking medication. Spiritual medication. He takes away blockages, and he lets you see that same situation completely different. Such as, I can pray, let's say somebody had a rough childhood, and that person has resentment towards his creator, towards his father. I could all of a sudden pray, and through that prayer, I can all of a sudden say, you know what, my father tried. He wasn't able to give me. I could all of a sudden turn that resentment into compassion, and all of a sudden, when I turn resentment into compassion, you know what happens? I'm now giving him love. That energy is away from me, and I'm renewed. That's an example of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go from mercy, from resentment to compassion. When you do that, not only do you not hold the energy in, you don't block your heart, but you're now releasing your energy. Who do you think feels better? Your father or you? You. That's why Reb Nachman never understood this. What do you mean prayer to God? I'm exhausted. I don't want to pray. Right. You're exhausted because you're holding everything in. Did you ever feel like that?
100%.
When you went in there so tired and exhausted,
Sure. Yeah.
and after that you felt like a different person?
Definitely. I think Rabbi Nachman even says that it's like a womb.
Correct.
That when you go to pray to Hashem, that, so to speak, when we think about life force, we think about energy, we think about molecules. So in Kabbalah and Chassidut, it's taught that those things are really made up of letters. The Hebrew letters are infusing creation with energy. So when you speak to Hashem, what you're really doing is you're placing those letters, that life force, into a womb. Because Rabbi Nachman says that Amunah, faith, is like a mother's womb.
Beautiful.
And how do you act on Amunah? Rabbi Nachman says that Amunah is prayer. The reason why a lot of people in our generation do not have belief, not in Hashem, not in themselves, is because they don't speak. So if you're going to say, but I thought belief is something that I think about in my mind, one of the big paradigm shifts is Rabbi Nachman teaching you that Amunah is tefillah. So when you pray, you will believe. Why? Because those letters are entering the womb of Amunah. They're getting renewed and they're coming back, so to speak, in your mind, like Gedale is speaking about. I know it's very deep. I also want to add something. When I was in...
I never saw it that way.
when I went to the kever of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, one of the only benefits of being in Queens is that I'm so sorry, no resentment.
Okay.
Thank you, Hashem.
You lost the Bukharian crowd.
No, I love them. They're good. I'm going to take them with me.
We love them.
So anyway, there's a kever of the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Queens. Okay? So I have visited from time to time. You write a note. You connect to Tzaddikim. He was a big Tzaddik.
Sure.
When I was there, there's a thing that people do, that they take this book where he wrote letters to his students and random people who wrote to him about difficulties and challenges in their life. And he would write back with like 1, 2, or 3 sentences that you literally saw the person knew exactly it was speaking to him, and it was exactly what they needed to hear. So there is some type of segula that when you go there, you pick with your finger one of the letters from the book, and the Chabadnik there reads you the letter in broken English. So what I did is I went over there, and I told them, pick this one. He read me the letter. And the response of the letter was, you have to forgive your father. When you forgive your father, you will get better. And I said to the guy, this is not the answer to my problem. I have problems in my life, for sure. This is not one of them. I'm okay with my father. I love my father. He's great. And then he said, no, if this is the letter, then this is for you. So what's the benefit of Hipodadut? I was able to now go into the side and to really contemplate and to talk it over with Hashem. Forgive your father, forgive your father. And I realized it was about Hashem. That I had been resentful of Hashem my whole life. And even after I became Baal Tshuva and believed in him and wanted to connect to the fact that he was good, I was holding on to something for over 20 years that in truth, I really resented him. And I needed to forgive Hashem, which sounds weird, in order for me to actually move beyond. And that was a huge source of energy for me. Like Gedale is saying, that it really comes from this suppression of feelings, of emotions, which you are now resenting. And when you're able to release it and to forgive, which is the most compassionate thing that you can do, and we learn from Hashem, that you actually release all that. That's why also when you go to sleep at night, you're supposed to say, I'm sorry, or I forget everybody for all these things. Why according to a mitzvah you have to do that? I understand if it's good advice. Why should you have to say, I forgive everybody? Because it gives you renewal of life force, that when you go to sleep at night, that you wake up with energy. If not, you don't get a good night's sleep.
You know, we speak about resentment a lot. That's a very common issue. You know, there's not a conversation that I try to help a couple that there's not an iceberg of resentment. Resentment is the number one marriage killer, obviously. Relationship killer, with you and your creator, with you and your friend, with you, across the board. Relationship killer. Resentment is frozen anger. And if you really look at what's the root cause of resentment, is really expectations. Expectations turn into resentment. So these are the expectations that we put up in the world. I expected this from that person. Well, maybe that's not what the person is. So you have to turn that expectation to appreciation, and then that doesn't become resentment. Because what happens is with resentment, it's frozen anger, like we said. Nachman says in Lesson 138 something very beautiful. And he says, the essence of godliness is in the heart. As it is written, God is the rock of my heart. As is explained elsewhere. It says, somebody with a pure heart, as it says, my heart is hollow, can know future events through which his heart tells him. So now he's telling us from Nachman that your heart is your GPS. Your heart is your antenna. Your heart is your guide. Your heart is your everything. And if that heart is not open, if that heart is stuck in resentment, how can your Creator communicate with you? How can I communicate with you? How could you communicate if that heart is blocked? So you can know future events through what your heart tells you. That's why our sages say, my heart knows my own bitterness. Bina is the communication. That little voice you hear, the reason why you want to have a pure heart and a clear heart, and you want to empty out that heart, is because that is your communication. Imagine being stuck in the middle of nowhere with no communication. That's despair. Despair is losing that communication. So you have to be very careful not to give energy away. Because remember, you need your heart to connect. If I'm taking that energy and I'm wasting on somebody's taking things personal or wasting that resentment, which is so hard, then I'm losing my communication. I'm losing my decision making. I'm losing the greatest tool in order to connect to my Creator. So if you ever thought about getting rid of resentment, this is the leverage. It has nothing to do with that person. It has to do with you lost your ability to communicate with your Creator because you already have a rock. You're supposed to have a pure, clear heart. And that is one of the biggest game changers. You have to ask yourself, am I giving energy away by holding resentment? Am I giving energy away? What's my energy worth? What is your energy worth today? You need energy for everything. But when we give energy away by taking things personal, by holding in resentment, you're giving away your energy. And that energy needs to be used somewhere else. Right. And it's very important to forgive, to make sure to not hold that energy, because you lose your communication. And there's nothing worse than losing your communication. We're going to take some questions if you guys want. Anybody have any questions so far? For the rabbi, please.
Amazing talk.
Thank you.
Right before that, this is kind of personal, but right before you got admitted to the psych ward, were you studying a lot of Kabbalah?
Yes. But it wasn't Kabbalah, straight Kabbalah. It was Chassidut, and one of the benefits of that is it doesn't run the same dangers of the energy is too much for you or the light is too intense for you. The source of the problem, Rabbi Nachman actually says it, is that when you're filling yourself with a lot of light, but you don't act, then you can actually cause more damage to yourself than if you didn't have the light at all. So for me, I was obsessed with this book. Like this is all I had. People came up to me in the psych ward like, are you sick? If you're sick, why are you reading all the time? You're supposed to be depressed. I'm like, I am depressed. That's why I'm reading this all the time. Wow. And while I was reading it, what's the whole benefit of it is it's light. It's mamish light. So that was what was keeping me going. However, the issue with light is you need to expend that energy as well. You need to act on that light. I was not acting on any of it. So it wasn't the normal, let's say, they say that when you learn Kabbalah or something, it could be bad for you if you don't know how to do it. It wasn't that. It was the fact that I was taking in tremendous amounts of light and I was not acting on any of it. And that was part of the difficulty.
How do you act?
Okay.
Kaylee.
Yeah. So how do you act? One of the beautiful things about Rabbi Nachman, and he says this in the 7th Torah of Likutei Moharan, the entire redemption of the Jewish people collectively and in particular is based on good advice, right? What does that mean, good advice? It means practical advice. That if I get real, solid, genuine advice that I can act on in a way that's beneficial for me, that's rooted in truth, this will bring me to redemption, geula, personally and collectively. Rabbi Nachman was insistent on his student Rav Natan that he should take all of the practical advice from the Likutei Moharan, and it's called the Likutei Eitzot. This is called advice in English. Yeah? And what does it mean to do the advice? It means that you do those things that Rabbi Nachman says to do. Now, obviously, there is, like when people come up to me and they ask me, there's so many things that he gives advice about. He literally speaks on every single topic. Sure. Where do I start? So what I tell people from my experience, and I believe it's even rooted in Rabbi Nachman's teachings, that the foundation is that you have a time every single day that you speak to Hashem, and specifically that when you speak to Hashem, you are, what Rabbi Nachman says, turning Torah into tefillah. That besides the act of me speaking out, because part of the issue, and a lot of people have talked to me about this, and I experienced this myself, is what's coming out of you is the darkness that you feel. Sometimes that darkness that you feel ends up contributing to the darkness that you have. Right. So Rabbi Nachman says, turn my Torah into tefillah. Why? Because my Torah is not dark. My Torah is hopeful. My Torah is light. My Torah is joy. My Torah can be redemption for you. So if you can take that lesson, whatever it is that you resonate with it, and you speak from your own heart and you ask Hashem, help me to experience this thing that he's talking about. So this act of turning Torah into tefillah within your hibodedut, this is one practical piece of advice that could literally change your whole consciousness, and it is action. So the act of speaking is very, very important. The other thing is, and obviously Rabbi Nachman says, and I know it's very difficult, like Gedale says, yes, it's very easy to get overwhelmed when you hear about a number, an hour, what is it, X, Y, and Z. And when people come to the classes, they say to me, they're used to going to like a Torah shmooze or like a Torah anytime class where they come away with some chizuk and they go home and their life is exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah? And they're used to that. They come to my class and I say, you have to start doing this and you need to start working on this and you need to start doing that. And I had a person, I remember once he came to me and said, David, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but this sounds really hard. And I told him, and I thought a lot about it, I said, it is really hard to do the things that Rabbi Nachman says, but it's harder not to. And when you get to the point that through self-evaluation and really paying attention to the voice inside of yourself, when you realize that the pain and suffering that comes from life, when it's not dealt with in a way which is conducive to having joy and happiness and peace and life force, that is always going to be harder than actually exerting effort and, let's say, talking to Hashem in hibodedut. That I have a personal time on my own, that I'm away from my phone, away from my wife, away from my husband, away from society, that I can listen to myself speak to Hashem. So this is one thing. Another thing is, I would have every single day a time in your day that you learn Rabbi Nachman's teachings. For me, and I had students like this. I had some students that they did hibodedut all the time. I had one student, he did 6 hours of hibodedut once, but he didn't learn Rabbi Nachman's Torah, and he was a mess. I had another guy who he was learning all the time Rabbi Nachman's Torah, but he wasn't doing anything he was saying, also a mess. Because Rabbi Nachman says that redemption comes when men and women are equal. So you see that this is not a new phenomenon. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Nachman pointed it out 200 years ago. What does it mean that they're equal? He says they're not the same. What does it mean spiritually male and spiritually female? Spiritually male is called Torah. Specifically, right. the tremendous aura of, like, let's say, Chassidut, which is a very high revelation of godliness. That would be male. And female is tefillah. To express yourself is a spiritually female phenomenon. When those two things become equal for you in your life, Rabbi Nachman says, you will live Egypt. So this is something that I highly suggest, that instead of thinking to yourself that maybe I need to just pray or I need to just learn, Rabbi Nachman used to say that the Ashkenazim or the Litvaks, they would say learn, learn, learn.
Right.
And the Hasidim, they say pray, pray, pray. But I say pray, learn, pray. So if you think to yourself, is that a chiddush? Aren't those the only two things that the Torah tells us to do, learn and pray? But he's saying no, when they're equal for you, that you spend equal amount of energy in both having a time that you talk and having a time that you learn, this is when you will experience a redemption in your life.
I mean, he also tells us right away, there's certain things that are going to block your heart from getting connected.
Sure.
So that's another thing, he speaks very, you have to be careful with your sexual energy.
Right.
You have to be careful the way you eat. You have to be careful how if you're chasing money all day long.
Right.
These three things are the three cardinal hearts where you could be a slave to something else. If you're a slave to only get rich or die trying, you're not going to connect, bottom line. Let's be honest. If you're, thinking about Uber Eats 6 hours of the day, you're not going to really think about Hashem for 10 minutes. You understand? If you're, again, spiritually, you're watching the wrong things, those things are called klipot. Klipot are things that block the good. A klipa is something, it's a shell that blocks the good. So that's something you have to be careful. The way I looked at it is, first I got to break the klipot, then I can taste the fruit. Mm. So I had a whole different angle about that. I had an angle like, okay, I know I have this issue, that this is costing me this issue. And I have that issue that's costing me that. So I really started more or less sacrificing some of the things that I did.
Right.
And then through the sacrifice, I got the opening spiritually.
Yeah, so I flipped it. I did the other way.
He did it the other way.
Yeah.
But I got it through, first, I got to break my head here. If I watched the way I ate, I was able to comprehend things differently. So I worked the opposite. I had to first do the breaking, because there's no way you're going to be able to connect if you unfortunately, that's why there's so many people on the 40-day challenge. Because if I can't get the guy to connect, I can't get the guy to connect. So what do you want me to do? So I'm always focusing on the solution.
Right.
Okay, how do I get this guy to connect? Why is he not connecting? And if he's not connecting, we got to get him enough leverage to connect. Because otherwise, we're going to lose him. I'm always looking at every single customer. Okay, why am I losing this person? Same thing as an addiction. This guy, one more addiction can kill him. So it's not, you don't have that much time. You don't have that much time to work with somebody. So you really have to go all in on the truth. Sometimes the truth is too strong, and the person says, I'd rather go back into comfort, but at least you have an option to win. You have an option to win, but there's a price to win. And we need to understand that. That price, it's expensive. There's a price for everything. Don't think it's going to come for you easy, because if it comes to you easy, it's going to leave easy. So my method was completely Tony Robbins, get lahabdil, but more of a mindset strategy and not so much into the motivation part. Like other people just want motivation. I want to be motivated. Listen, no, you need strategy. Motivation, and this is why our sages say something beautiful. In life, you could be a window or you could be a diamond. A window, it's dependent upon the weather. How's the weather? Oh, it's nice. I'm in a good mood. You need a lot of exterior motivation. A diamond makes his own light. Doesn't need motivation. He has his own light. And that's the difference between becoming a window, where you got to become a diamond. When you get a diamond, your light shines. I can find a way. I can strategize my way out of a problem. I can recognize I'm brokenhearted. I can recognize, yes, I'm not depressed, but I am brokenhearted. I'm going through a moment of darkness. I have strategy when I'm in that state. Instead of being that window, we don't want to be a window forever. Because what happens? You always need exterior motivation. I got to get motivated to work out. That's the shape you're going to be in. You're going to be in the shape you're going to be in if you need motivation all the time. Once you get going, then results come. And that's something that we need to understand. We're too much into this 2-minute chizuk videos. It doesn't work. It's like, do you have an app to work out for 2 minutes to lose 30 pounds? 2-minute abs, 2-minute nothing. There's nothing in 2 minutes that's going to get you anything. And you have to get out of that 2-minute mindset. Very, very important. Yes?
This was a really great class.
Thank you.
You speak a lot about the idea of gratitude, and you have two different aspects that I found that you speak about. First one is that you're supposed to thank God for your troubles, and thank Him every day for your troubles. And then the other mindset is to thank Him already for your success and attempts. So, which way do you go?
Good, you can answer. Repeat the question so they can hear it.
Yeah, so I think the question was that there's, for this woman, there's two aspects to thanking. There is the thanking for the problem itself, which is one of Rabbi Nachman's greatest chidushim, that changes lives instantaneously, the act of thanking for the actual problem. And then the other thing was, again, sorry, do you remember?
Thank you for the gratitude.
So I don't do that one yet. I didn't know that was a one, but I
do.
Yeah. I thank Hashem for whatever will be, but not necessarily that I will have the success that I intended on having. Because the truth is, one of the biggest shifts for me was, like Gedale said, it's a shift in expectation. Whereas in the past, the way that I grew up was, and the way that I thought was, I am going to control, manipulate, and cause something to take place. And when you're younger, that can actually happen. The issue is when you become an adult and you go out into the world,
correct,
that blows up in your face big time. No matter
your imagination.
Yes,
you lose your imagination.
No matter how charismatic you are, no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how many resources you have, Hashem will make it blow up in your face. So therefore, for me, what is very, very important was a big shift. I don't control the events in my life. The Gemara says that if a person tells you that he tried hard and he didn't learn, don't believe him. If he didn't try hard and he learned, don't believe him. But if he tried hard and he learned, or he achieved, believe him. He learned. So the question is, why doesn't he say that he achieved it? Why does he say that he ended up getting it? And the answer from the Gemara is that we do not cause the outcomes of the events in our life. We only cause the effort that we put into it. The outcome of the event is Hashem Himself. So if you understand that all of your free will comes in the domain of what is my hishtadlut, what is the effort I put in, but that the actual result, and this is not the way that we usually think of it, is a completely separate entity. It's not the result of my effort. This is now, I did this. It's like pulling, the jackpot. Not that I ever gambled or anything like that, but if you went and you did one of these, so that gives the ability for the whole thing to start spinning. So this is, I'm understanding that that's me putting in my effort. But then what happens after that is not up to me. So for instance, when I started teaching in the beginning, I would get very disappointed, let's say I had a big class, and then all of a sudden one guy comes in, he's picking his nose. So for me, that was very disappointing, and I was wondering what's wrong with me. Is there an issue here? And I have self-critical and X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And as time goes on and you realize that there really is no difference, let's say, between Baruch Hashem, Gedale having a beautiful class like this, and let's say if only one person came, because that is not in my control at all.
Sure.
Only the effort that we put in producing the class is on us. And when you realize that and you shift your energy that way, then the gratitude can be very, very energetic and can add tremendous purpose.
Right.
So this is from,
But when you have to think in advance, because we have a danger of falling into a victim mindset. So the reason why you have to thank Hashem for the problems is because the bottom line is that knowledge has been concealed from you. The reason why you're going through that is it's a concealment. And we have to be careful that if we get into anger or resentment or any of these modes, we can get into a constriction consciousness. That's the dangerous part. Because then you'll focus more on the problem, not the solution. So why we say thank you in advance, because we believe our Creator created the world out of mercy, and He only wants to give to us. And we just don't understand why. So you can think in advance, not because you know everything, but it's the danger of recognizing that when you get to knowledge in life, you recognize you know nothing.
Right.
So sometimes the reason why I feel bad in the first place is because I'm giving it a different meaning. And the meaning is only giving based on my perspective. And what happens, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. So we want to get you to a heightened state of consciousness to thank in advance, which is Emunah. And that thanking in advance will help you understand why it happened to you. That's why our sages say first is Emunah, then comes knowledge. So the first stage is you need to run to the light and recognize it's one. Then I'll know why it happened to me. Right. Versus, how come this happened to me? Then you lose your Emunah. So you always want to run to the gratitude, even if you don't understand. You could say, Hashem, I believe you, but I don't understand you. It's perfectly honest to say that. But you have to run to the oneness. Because when you start separating one, then it becomes two. And this is the source of all problems. When one is not one anymore. When one becomes two. Then I start blaming you, I start becoming a victim, I start becoming, unfortunately, he did that to me, look what happened to me. That's what we have to be careful with, which is very hard to. Yes?
So, I have a question. I think I've worked in my Emunah, and it's great, but as a product of this generation, I'm very impatient.
Sure.
Right? I want to see the results of my efforts, and I know it's going to come and being a but any skills or practical advice from Nachman on building patience?
He talks about it in lesson 155. He says faith gives you patience. Remember, ultimately, if you get something that's premature, imagine you had a woman was pregnant, and she says, I want to give birth in 6 months. You kill the child. You think you're doing yourself a favor. I can't deal with the pains. Give birth in 6 months. It would ultimately kill the child. It would be the worst thing for the child. So you have to understand some things take 9 months. Because according to that time, the patience in the vessel is built. The vessel is built through the patience. And ultimately when we sin, what happens when we sin? We had no patience. That's why we sinned. So what happens? Because you sinned and you didn't have patience, you know what you need to do? Now you need to wait. You ultimately have to rectify the same problem that got you in the problem. The problem is I have no patience. So now, because I want to control things.
Right.
So literally I have to do the complete opposite and wait and hold and have faith, which is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what needs to be done.
I would also add something as well. Rabbi Nachman teaches in the 6th Torah of Likutei Moharan something very, very deep and practical.
Sure.
That is that there are several levels of the soul. The highest level of the soul is called Keter, which means crown, which is Hebrew for corona, by the way, just something to think about.
Ugh, I can't even hear that word.
Okay, sorry, I meant the beer. I didn't
No
mean
word.
the
We
disease.
don't say that word
I
anymore.
was just talking about the
In
beer
Florida,
on
we don't say
vacation
that.
now. I was hoping you give me one. Okay,
so
so anyway.
Just got PTSD.
Sorry. So, Keter is the crown, okay? Now, very interestingly, what does he say is Aramaic, this word Keter? It's Qatar. Qatar means waiting, okay? Now, in Western society, in capitalistic society, in 2021, what do we only think about? Achieving our goals. We do not realize that the highest goal possible and the highest achievement is called patience. Patience, says Rabbi Nachman, is not a means to an end. Patience is an end. If you realize that patience is not, so to speak, the mechanism that I need to get me to that point that I'm waiting for, and you realize and you have a paradigm shift, that really it is the greatest goal in and of itself, the highest revelation of my soul is called patience, then you can actually get excited about being patient. Then it's not a matter of, oh my gosh, I have to grind and I have to wait for this thing to take place. Instead, realizing that the patience itself is a higher revelation of your own soul than the actual outcome taking place in a certain way that you want it to. So it's a reorientation of the way that you look at success. When you think of success, we were trapped and connived by society to teach us that when it goes the way we want it to, we have succeeded. That's not true. If you're only in control of your effort and you're not in control of the result, so then your success cannot be based on what happens after the fact. However, we see that in truth, the deepest attainment you could possibly have is called patience. Rabbi Nachman literally says that this is called the land of Israel. That this birthright that Hashem gave to us, that we're supposed to teach to the world, this heightened state of consciousness is called waiting. And this is something that we never think about because we think we just have to wait. But imagine if you were excited to wait because you realize that waiting, so to speak, is me capping out on my soul's potential.
Amazon waited 7 years to make money. Amazon waited 7 years to make money. Waiting is also a cleansing.
Yeah, sure.
There's a cleansing that's happening. When somebody's single and they're waiting and they're trying and they're praying, that's a cleansing. That's actually a cleansing. So you have to understand, the bride wants to be married, but she's got a big red stain. Wait till we clean it. Otherwise, it's going to backfire. So waiting, and remember, why do we get so impatient in the first place? Because we're not conscious of time. Lesson 61. If you tell a 4-year-old, let's go to Orlando, you know what he'll tell you? Are we there yet? What time are we going there? What are you doing? So tell a 4-year-old, you have to wait. Tell a 4-year-old, why can't a 4-year-old understand waiting? Because to a 4-year-old, on his consciousness, 4 hours is forever. But go tell your mother 4 hours to tell you, no big deal. So you recognize the reason why we're impatient is because we're not focused in the process, like you're saying here. If you understand that the moment is now, that is the moment. If I'm chasing another moment, and you see this all the time in recovery, I say, how do you guarantee a relapse? 2 things. You get into a relationship in treatment. Believe it or not, I have not gone to a rehab wedding yet. Okay? And there's plenty of relationships.
Sounds like a TV
There's
show.
plenty of relationships. Why? Because they're covering one addiction with another addiction. They don't want to deal with the trauma, but now they're in love. They just met the person, I don't know, a week ago, two days ago. And all of a sudden, what happens? It's just a cover-up. It's not real love. It's a cover-up. I'm in pain. You're in pain. Let's be in love. It's not real, obviously. And the second one is, if you rush the hour, I want to go home. I'm ready. I'll book you a nice seat back. And it happens every single time. Because until they recognize this is what they have to go through. This is a spiritual process. This is not a quick fix, get my certificate at the DMV and be happy and now I can drive. No, this is a spiritual enlightenment with your new identity being created. You think it's going to be in a week? So that already, forget it. the guy's going to relapse. Guaranteed. Because he's already has the same problem with the addiction. What is addiction telling you? If I just get high, I'm going to be happy. And then what happens? They come back with shame. It's the same pattern. I need another moment to be happy. So once you need another moment to be happy, you know what's going to happen when you get to the next moment? Then you're going to need another moment to be happy. And then your whole life, what are you doing? You're just running from one moment. And this is what we call today fear of missing out. Right. People are at a party. Where's the other party? Nothing's good enough anymore. This is coming from fear of missing out, of not being in the moment. Right. The same reason why you're in dinner with 20 friends and you have to take a picture of the food. It's not enough that you have 20 friends and everybody's enjoying. Now you need to take a picture of the food now. You understand? Nothing is good enough. No moment is good enough. I need to be somewhere else. So you have to learn how to shift and say, I'm doing this is enough.
Yeah.
I'm doing this is enough. Because otherwise, you get nothing. You get a little bit of this, you get a little bit of this, you get a little of this, and you get nothing. This is why air signs have a hard time making decisions. Because they start something, they move on to the next thing. No, let me do this. No, let me do this. Let me do this. You know what happens? Then they have a midlife crisis when nothing gets done. And they completely go crazy.
Yeah, 100%.
One thing, do it, finish it. Next. One thing, do it, finish it. And this is exactly the ego. The ego tells you the moment is not enough. It's not enough this moment. You need another moment. Right. And then your whole life you're going to be chasing moments and getting nothing.
I think it's really hidden and undercover also. That I think that there's a root that you don't see, or not you specifically, we don't see. And that is that we're not happy with ourselves. Right. And that because we don't think that we are good inherently, we have to chase after it. One of the deepest things that Rabbi Nachman teaches and Chassidut teaches is that you have a piece of God inside of you. That is good. You can't change it. Even if you did the most horrifying things that nobody in the rest of the generation has done, that piece of you has never changed. There is a part of you which is inherently good. When you try and actively tap into that part of yourself every day through talking to Hashem, you tap into that part of yourself by learning about that piece of yourself. Right. Then you don't need to wait, so to speak, for something to take place quickly for you to be happy. Or, for instance, I always had fear of missing out. I remember when I was in college.
This takes a lot of effort. Takes a lot of effort.
Sure. You go from frat party to frat party. Everyone was horrible. You're sweating profusely through your clothes. The music is terrible. And you're thinking about how I can get to the next one. And I remember going to the next one. It was worse. And now I have guys bumping up on me like me and Gedale are doing right now. And then you have later on... over and over. And every time that I went to another place, I was thinking about what's going on in the other place. But the real truth is, I'm not happy with myself. I remember I had a friend who told me I'm not very connected to social media now, so I don't really know all the things that are going on like I used to.
Nothing's going on.
Okay, I heard...
Nothing's going on, just in case you know.
I heard from my best friend in Israel that there is a person who is very successful, and he's a forward thinker, he's a pioneer in thinking, and he is actually trying to move to another planet and create his own civilization. I think he's very well known. And I started laughing when he told me this. And he said, David, I didn't laugh when you gave your whole sermon about Torah and about this and that. Why are you laughing at me now when I say this one thing? I said, I'm so sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I just, and Hashem plopped this idea in my head, which I feel is so true, and I've thought about it a lot since. The less happy you are inside, the further you have to go to find it.
Right. Beautiful.
And I really believe this is emet, that this is true. And you'll see that through Rabbi Nachman's teachings, and that you try and bring them into your own and personalize them for yourself and act on it, you will see that actually this thing that you're looking for outside of you is really inside of you. And the more you fill that up, the less you have to go to actually find it.
Exactly. That's why the 14-day quarantine. You tell a guy you only have to quarantine for 35 minutes, everybody would walk around. Right. But 14 days by myself, forget it. I can't get the virus. So you could see this quarantine, it was like a death sentence. 14 days by myself? What the heck am I going to do for 14 days by myself? That was the worry. That means I can't spend a week by myself calm. That was the worry. So that's teaching you how our society, and one of the best ways not to get corona is to do his bodedut.
Do you know what
the quarantine yourself?
Do you know what the Hebrew word for isolation is in Israel?
It's bodedut.
It's called
bidud.
Bidud. That literally the process that Hashem put us all in across the world is that we should take a break from our external lives and do something called bidud. Literally that we have been decreed to do bodedut across the world.
Exactly. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. I think we'll end there. Any more questions? Are we good?
I think Levi had.
Yes. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I just had this question. We're trying to process of not retaining all your emotions of stress and everything going throughout the day and in your life in general. Would you be able to go further in depth of how to relinquish that in the proper way?
I mean, whatever you're feeling, God always sends you. It's like almost like you have a car and you have a red light. That's what you need to fix. A feeling is languages of the body. So obviously feelings, when a person has a feeling, that means he has stagnant energy. Usually you'll have a feeling of fear. So that's the feeling that you need. Emotion is a signal to change. So God's sending you an emotion of fear to tell you you're not trusting. Or He's showing you an emotion of sadness to say maybe you've had an expectation. An emotion is telling you need to change either procedure or perspective. It's telling you to move, and that's why the word emotion in Latin means to move. The worst thing you could do is get an emotion and suppress it. Get an emotion or express it. An emotion is telling you to move. That means the work has to be done. I have a whole class on that. I think last week's class. But emotions are signals to change. So when you have an emotion, for example, if I'll wake up with all of a sudden fear, then his bodedut will be about trusting in God. Why am I not trusting? What am I not trusting? Where have I that trust? Where did that trust flow to? Or all of a sudden I walk around just in a negative mood. Okay, why am I walking around like this? Maybe I had an expectation that somebody did. Or maybe I took things personal. Why am I taking personal in the first place? So what you're doing, you're basically taking the emotion, you're ripping it apart, and then you're elevating it. That's the purpose of an emotion. I could show you a consciousness chart on how to do that. But that's really what we're doing, is we're taking these emotions, we're ripping them apart, we're naming them to tame them, and then we're elevating them through the opposite. That's exactly what you do with an emotion. The worst thing you want to do is take an emotion and bury it in. Because then what happens? You bury it, and next thing you know, you're holding negative energy, then all of a sudden you become moody, you're holding things in.
Yeah, I would add to that and say that this is really one of the essential reasons why bodedut is so life transforming.
Right,
it's such a game changer. And especially the earlier you can do it, like Gedale says, if you don't do it early in the day, you're not going to do it the rest of the day. Right. You have to make this number one priority and do it as early as you can, because life is going to happen to you, and then it's going to become very difficult for you to follow through with it and to function. But when you do it, Rabbi Nachman brings a pasuk that King David, who had a lot of emotions, but he also did a lot of bodedut, and he became the Mashiach as a result, the king who's going to redeem all of us. So he said that my heart is hot within me, and I spoke out. Right. So he says that you see from this pasuk, what is David saying is the key to dealing with intense emotions? It's the speaking out of them. It's the speaking out. I even heard, I don't know if this is true, that when Freud started psychotherapy, which we obviously know now is a worldwide phenomenon, he started with women, and he would tell them to speak to the wall for 1 hour straight, the blank wall, which is very interesting.
Sounds like marriage today,
right? But they got better from it,
right?
Because they knew they were speaking to a blank wall, as opposed to when they speak to the husband. They didn't know when they signed up. But it's interesting because the whole concept of they spoke for 1 hour straight to a blank wall. There was nothing projecting itself back. That itself was healing for these women. That was the beginning of psychotherapy in the world. And we right. And we see that this is mamash. This is the speaking. You got to talk. It doesn't mean you have to tell everyone what's going on. It doesn't mean that you have to tell everybody all the stuff that's going on. But you have to have a time every day that you do say those things. I'm just being as honest as I can be, because this is very, very important to me, that everybody has the best chance to move out of their situation. I've seen therapists for years, since I was 10. Every year seeing another therapist, more than I can fit on all my limbs. Okay? For the past 3 years, thank God, Baruch Hashem, I haven't seen a therapist for the first time in my life. Okay? What's the reason? It's not because I don't have a therapist. I still have a therapist. I just have a different one. That Nissim Black says that God is your therapist, and I could talk to you for free. I wish I said it as cool as him. I can't say it as cool as him. But this is, you would need one. There is no way that you do not have a way to express what's going on inside of you. As long as you're not expressing those emotions, they become much more intense and they become much more destructive. Right. So you have to every single day say to yourself, not if I have time later, I'll talk to Hashem. Not like this. Like the same way that people in our generation run after money. Right. I tell people all the time, if you run after Hashem like you run after money, you're going to have tremendous joy in your life.
Exactly. And the second part of his bodhidut is really checking in. The whole point of checking in is, yes, Hashem, I know I'm arrogant. I need to work on it. So you don't need to be reminded of things.
Right.
So basically there's a concept called double jeopardy. You have the ability to take anything you're going through. Let's say you have an anger issue. Let's say you have an issue with impatientness. You should say, yes, I'm impatient. Yes, I'm angry. I need to work on this midah. It's destroying my life. It's taking so much of my energy. Once I admit it, what happens? Punishment is canceled. That means the reason punishment exists in the first place is in the absence of tshuva. So the minute I say I made a mistake, I'm sorry, I did this, they don't need to remind you in heaven of who you are. So basically humble yourself or you will be humbled. So we have the option to take the judgment in our court by saying, yes, I have an issue. Yes, I have a problem with this. I'm not running away from it. But that at least will be able to cancel the judgment because it doesn't become an upper judgment. Upper judgments only come when you have an issue, you ignore it, you pretend you don't have it, and then heaven will remind you of your issue. That's the only purpose really of a judgment, of a punishment, is to get your attention. The whole purpose is to get your attention. But if you already check in, I don't need to be reminded of who I am. Good? Any more? Great. Yes?
This class that you just gave us, is it going to be on tape?
It will be recorded, yes. The battery's almost dead, but we're still hanging on.
If you guys all do right now, we will get through the class.
We're still hanging on.
Promise.
The battery's still...
We'll make it.
You have about 7-8 minutes and then the battery's going to die. Yes?
Okay, so I hope I word this correctly because it's kind of a weird question, but it's obviously we all have our victim mindset and our negative emotions. We're all very sensitive. So when you're like, why does Hashem send you people in your life that are stuck in the victim mindset? Like, what's your role in terms of like, are you supposed to get them out of it? Also, it's hard to not take that personally. They're victims, and then like you said, like they project their problems onto you, and then you're stuck in that mindset because you feel like what you did made them upset, even though logically you know like they're going through something, and what I said was not like an offensive thing. I didn't upset them with my words. It's just them taking things personally, but then you start to take it personally. So like, what's your role in terms of like helping that person get out of it? If you're aware of like your own things and you know that you did nothing, or like are you, is it God sending you a message like you still have more to work on and you should be more sensitive? Like where do you draw those lines, and like how do you also create the boundaries?
Sure.
But not ignore Hashem's statements.
Right. So there's a concept called boundaries or burnouts. First, sometimes you need the boundary. There's no way that person can be helped at that moment. Sometimes there's no way that person can be helped because the person's not helpful and and you're just going to get dragged into it. So you have to know how to put proper boundaries. It's healthy for you to put proper boundaries. And the next thing is really the first thing, obviously I deal with tons of people they're underneath. Unfortunately, Reb Nachman has a great story called the Turkey Prince.
Oh my gosh, it's the best.
The person's a prince, but they're acting like a turkey. But they're not a turkey. The difference between I'm acting like a turkey, I'm a prince. I'm acting like a turkey, but I'm not a turkey. So there's a great class I put steps on how to elevate people. It talks about 7 steps on how to build a person's self-esteem. I would recommend that class. It goes into details on literally how to work with people who are just in a very, very bad mindset. And it basically talks about doing one thing at a time. And you can make it your project. And you have to literally hold their hand and just think about compassion, listening. And then it's a process. I could send you the class on that. It's a whole class. It's not for a full 2-minute conversation. But if you can't handle the you got to put boundaries many times.
There's a pattern throughout the entire Torah over and over again There's first a process of separation. The Baal Shem Tov speaks about this, and then there is a sweetening. That even though the way that we learn, and obviously when you come from families that they're doing with you are unhealthy for themselves and also for you, and then therefore they feel that you're doing the wrong thing because of that, which is very, very, very difficult. However, the greatest thing that you can actually do for another person is find your own fulfillment. We see with Noach that he had to get on a boat. We see with Abraham that Hashem said to him when he was looking for good in his life, he was looking for Hashem, he said, Lech lecha. You have to go for yourself to find yourself. And when you leave your father's home, the place you grew up in, your country, you'll go to the place that I'm going to show you. So the obvious question is, just tell me where Hashem is. Like imagine if I said, do you want to hang out for Shabbat? You guys want to come over. Where do you live? Just leave your house. And then what? Leave your society. Okay, great. And then leave your country. And then what? You'll be in the place that I'll show you. This is a very bizarre way to explain in the most critical moment in history, when you want to reveal yourself to humanity, how to get to me. But the answer is, when you leave all of those things, you're automatically in the space of Hashem. Because there are many things which are blocking us from being able to experience Hashem in our life. And therefore there is a period of time, and I've seen this very often, that you need to, so to speak, separate for time, not in a way of selfishness. You're not doing it in order to hurt anybody, but because you're not able to fill up your cup. In the Torah it says that you want to be a cup that you're filled up with water to the extent that the water is overflowing. That you do not need to go put your water in somebody else's cup. It's automatically flowing out. And Rabbi Nachman says in the 8th Torah of the Likutei Moharan, you need to be very, very aware and cautious of trying to help other people when you yourself are not well, or completely. And he says that if you do not get to the point that you have attained a very high level of mastery of emotions, of psychology, of spirituality,
it's worse.
Then it's worse. Then automatically when you try and give that person, you will automatically be brought down with them. So to know in your mind that I'm doing that person a favor by making this boundary. Even though they might feel that you're hurting them, you are actually doing it for selfless reasons, because I know that if I go there, you're going to get worse and I'm going to get worse. And it's just a period. And to understand that Bezrat Hashem in a year, in a few years, you'll be able to come back with a smile on your face. You won't get so frazzled when they speak to you about all the stuff that they're going through. And they might even ask you for advice, and you won't be shifted. But that will take a period of time, so to speak, that you go in the hyperbaric chamber of Rabbi Nachman, and hopefully you'll come back out very refreshed.
Not easy. Not easy. Not easy. Good? Everybody good? Any more questions? Good?